Welcome everyone. It is 6 o'clock, and as Paul indicated just prior to to making this live, we are on YouTube live, just for everyone to know. We're going to give it a couple minutes here. We have a lot of people joining, and so we'll give it a couple minutes, hopefully, for it to slow down a bit and not be beeping us every couple seconds. So hold tight. I appreciate everyone's patience on this, helping us accommodate this public meeting in this crazy world we happen to be living in, right?
Mr. Drake?
Yes.
Just got a lot of gravelly echo on your mic. Everybody else sounds better than yours.
Oh, that's not good. We have Paul Gedge, who is our main guy here. Paul, how are things sounding?
Sound great to us.
Okay.
She sounded better than you.
Yeah.
Sometimes it could be something on your end. There could be an echo with your device, whatever you happen to be using. Maybe no. Paul. Paul, do you have any suggestions for what they might do?
You're sounding real muffled.
Exactly. Are you using a headset mic?
I'm not. I'm using actually a puck microphones, and it should be pretty good. We can move over to an alternative microphone though if we need to. I'm waiting to hear from Paul.
You sound good to me.
Yeah, this is Chris York. You sound good on our end as well. So
okay.
This is Ross Hanson. Mike, you sound good here too. So I'm not sure what the problem is.
Okay.
What do I go to get on YouTube to find this?
Okay, so the page that you went to find this meeting, the Google Meet meeting, has a link to the YouTube stream, and you can find you can find that stream there.
Oh, sorry, my computer went down about 10 minutes ago. Okay, thank you.
You can also search on YouTube Utah water rights, and we have a channel there that you can find, and it should pop up on the main page.
All right, thank you very much.
Yeah. Okay, well, I'm not quite sure. There we go. Thank you, Sarah. I'm not quite sure what's going on with the audio. I think we need to carry on. I'm getting enough reports that things are working. It is an unfortunate side effect of these meetings that sometimes people's audio and video don't quite work out. So we will do our best to accommodate that. So I appreciate everyone joining tonight. I know this is an investment of time from you to be with us tonight, so appreciate that. My name is Michael Drake. I am the Assistant State Engineer over Adjudication in the State Engineer's Office, which is also known as the Utah Division of Water Rights. And so we are here today to talk about the adjudication of the Daniels Creek Subdivision. Now, before we get too far along, I wanted to cover a couple items here. I can't remember if Paul indicated this before the recording started or the live stream or after, but if you are on a telephone, one of the big things we need to pay attention to in these remote meetings is muting our microphones when we're not talking. If we have microphones on, then it causes a lot of feedback problems. And so make sure your microphones are off when you're not speaking. We are going to provide plenty of opportunity to ask questions. And in fact, we're going to try something out, a little tool that Google Meet has that lets us break out and and make some smaller groups where you can each ask any questions you may have. You know, as with all these technology things, hopefully it's not a disaster, but we're going to try and use that. And so we'll talk about that when we get to that point. For telephones, you press *6 to mute yourself or to unmute yourself. We have the ability to mute people, and so we may mute you. Please don't be offended. We're just trying to make it a good meeting. If and when you have a question, you can certainly unmute yourself. We're going to try and defer questions about specific issues towards the end, towards that question session that we're going to host. And then we're trying to provide lots of different ways for you to ask questions. So let's go ahead and get into it. Again, my name is Michael Drake. We also have several different team members on the meeting as well. You probably won't meet them at this time. We have Nick Yeiter, we have Gary Brimley, we have Sarah Dennert and Aspen Johnston, who are all going to be working on this subdivision. Again, we'll kind of defer some of those introductions till later. We also have the regional engineer for the Utah Lake region, Ross Hansen, who's on with us. And I'm not sure if there's others of our staff members here. If I miss you, I'm sorry. There's a lot of people on here. I'm not going to try and scan that. So I think we'll just go ahead and get going here. So this, obviously we would love to be up in the Heber Valley to hold this meeting. And we were holding off on initiating this subdivision until the time that we could get up there, and it's just not happening. And so we are holding this meeting electronically just to keep this process moving. You probably have heard last year at about this time, we initiated the Midway subdivision, and we need to keep things moving. And so, you know, we were hoping things would get better to the point we could hold these meetings, but we're just going to proceed. So this statement will just be made part of the permanent record as a record of why we held the meeting the way we did. Moving on here, this is our agenda and what we're going to cover. We're going to have an overview of the adjudication. We're going to talk about the proposed determination process, because that's ultimately what we're working towards in this adjudication. We're going to talk about some of the significant issues and the anticipated timeline. And then, as I already stated, we're going to provide you the opportunity to ask questions, because I know you have some. I understand this is a confusing process and a confusing notice that you received. So on the screen, you'll see an email address that you can send questions to. We will try to monitor this throughout the meeting. You may, for simple questions, Gary Brimley may just respond to you right then and there. If it's a question that we want to bring to the group, we may read it. We'll just kind of play that by ear, but we're going to do everything we can to answer your questions. You can also post in the comments. Now, just from the run of things, I probably won't monitor that myself. I'll depend on Gary to stop me and bring up a question if there's something that needs to be brought up immediately. And then at the end, we're going to provide you an opportunity to ask questions. And we're going to do these breakout rooms where we have some staff members that will help you with any questions you have. And that will hopefully let us get through questions in a rapid pace that we would need to for this meeting format.
Mike?
So, yes.
This is Gary Brimley. I just wanted to reiterate that I'm going to do my best to monitor the water rights _adjudication at utah.gov email address. And if you'll take a moment to facilitate that for me, that would be very helpful on your phone.
Oh, I put my phone down.
I see that Carrie and Paul Johnston has asked
one moment here. I apologize.
They're asking if the presentation has started. Apparently the audio isn't working for them. I think we can't be everybody's tech services. We can't help everybody with their technical issues, but I'd like to say ensure that your volume is up on your computer. I think everybody generally, most people on the call can hear what's going on.
Yeah, and if you could, Gary, note that this meeting is being hosted on YouTube, and so maybe if they have problems, they can jump over to YouTube and pick the stream up there. If it's anything like my house, everyone knows how to use YouTube. Okay, so we'll carry on here. Again, apologies for any technical issues you may be suffering. We have reports from many people that it's working, so we think our end is good. And again, a reminder, mute your microphones. It seems to be the main trouble we run into when we have audio problems is, and you can mute your microphone down at the bottom of the screen where you see the agenda slide, and it's a little microphone thing. And again, we may mute you just to keep.
Where she says there's.
We may mute you just to keep things moving. Okay, so let's move on here. So let's start it off. I know many of you are probably very concerned. The notices that we send are definitely a little intimidating, and we know that it raises a lot of concern. I've been through what you're now experiencing. I live in Sandy, and my area was adjudicated back in 2018, so I received all the same notices that you guys did. And I took a lot of questions from neighbors and church and what have you. And so we're maybe I'll start this off by saying that we're obligated by this process to send notice and summons out to everyone in this geographical area and join everyone as a party to this legal proceeding. And so that's why everyone has received this notice. And definitely it looks a little scary. We're going to try and remove the scariness from that. Really, those notices pertain to you only if you have a water right. So what is a water right? Well, let's cover the basics. A water right is a right to divert and beneficially use water. And some of the defining elements of a water right that we need to cover, because we're going to use some of these terms throughout this presentation. A water right is defined by what it's used for. That's called the nature of beneficial use. This is, the beneficial uses could be many different things. The most common things are domestic, stock watering, and irrigation. Another very common one is municipal use. But there are other uses. Those are just the most common ones. So that is what we use our water right for. Another defining aspect is the priority date. This is the date that the water right was first placed to use, or the beneficial uses were first put in place. And this is important because when we have conflicts between water rights, we look to the more senior water right to say, well, then you were here first, so you have the right to the water first. Another defining aspect is the quantity of water. And this is measured in a couple different ways. One is by flow rate. This is most common with surface water rights, or by volume, which it's a wacky unit we use, but it's called acre feet. And that is most common with underground water rights. Okay, another element of a water right is the point of diversion. And this is the place where you take your water from. It's the source of water. And this could take a few different forms. And then finally, it's the place of use, where you use your water right. And we have a couple pictures here of some common points of diversion that you might find on your property. And this is where we can maybe pivot into what a water right might be evidenced by. You're going to find some evidences on your property. You're going to find a well, maybe. And that's a picture of a well, the first picture you see there. You might see ditches. You might see head gates. You might see a spring box. So those are some of the things that you look on your water right. Look to see if you have a water right. Generally, if you have a water right, you know that you have a water right because they require upkeep. You need to physically do things to keep the water flowing, and you need to do administrative things to make sure that you maintain the right to a water right. And so generally, you know. Now that's not 100% thing, but let's talk about some common cases where let's call some common cases that a water right is not. So a water right is not a share in an irrigation company. In this case, the irrigation companies are the ones that actually own the water rights. So what does this mean in this adjudication process? Well, shareholders in an irrigation company aren't required to file water users claims. The irrigation companies are, however. So if you're a shareholder, you don't need to respond to this, but it may be wise, depending on what your company is like, to make sure that your company is being responsive. And so that's something you can do. If you're an irrigation company, it may be wise to assure your shareholders that you're on top of this and that you're responding and participating. Okay, so that's a key takeaway here, that if you just own shares in an irrigation company, your irrigation company more than likely is going to be engaged with us, working with us, filing claims that are needed in this process, and just overall participating in this adjudication. Okay, another thing that a water right is not is it is not a connection to a public water supplier. And by public water supplier, I mean a municipality that delivers water to your property through a meter, or a water company that delivers culinary water to your property. In this case, that public water supplier, that city or that municipality, they know what they need. They know water rights, and they're going to participate in this adjudication on your behalf. So that's hopefully gives you an indication of whether or not you have a water right. If you're one of these that is in the a water right is not column, then you don't need to participate in this adjudication, and you can just forget about it. You don't need to file a claim. So hopefully that covers most of the questions we tend to get. That's a lot of the phone calls we get when we initiate one of these books. So we're going to move along here, and again, write down any questions you have. We'll give you a chance at the end to answer these. To help you understand the reasons we conduct adjudications, we need to understand the historical context behind water development in Utah. So let's start with a little history lesson. Yay, back to history, right? So most of you know the story. In 1847, the first groups of pioneers came into the Salt Lake Valley and soon diverted City Creek onto the ground to begin growing crops. And here we have a nice representation of this. And very quickly it was identified that, hey, we need to set some rules on how this is going to happen. And so in 1848, Brigham Young kind of established an early and fundamental principle of water rights in the state of Utah, or I guess in the territory at the time. And he said, there shall be no private ownership of the streams that come out of the canyons. These belong to the people, all of the people. So this same principle applies today. Water is a public resource that is to be used for the joint benefit of the people in the state of Utah. And fundamentally, this principle is one of the reasons we are here today. Being a public resource and being a limited resource, more so limited this winter, unfortunately, we need to manage it effectively. And adjudication is one of the tools we use to manage our water resources. And we'll get into this in more detail, but let's carry on with the history lesson. So the pioneer settlement period is defined by church-centric government and decision-making, but aligned with fundamental water management principles. And so many of you may remember your Utah history in school. how it went from bigger areas down to a smaller and smaller area and to the area that we now recognize as the state of Utah. But early water use in the area was on a community basis. Water was considered to be a community good and was intended to meet the needs of everyone. And also coupled with that was the doctrine of priority. And this evolved from the church leaders' recognition that those who first got there and placed the water to use should have a higher right to that water source, and that later people shouldn't come in and impair those that were there first. Okay. And then also, given that the territory was initially settled by this religious group, that conflicts were settled through ecclesiastical channels, and so bishops and stake high councils were some of the initial government authorities that settled conflicts between water right issues. Okay, so carrying on here. We move from the pioneer era into the territorial area. And here we start to see the move of water law away from ecclesiastical authority and into a secular governmental organization. So in 1852, the Territorial Legislative Assembly began to take the first steps away from this ecclesiastical authority. It gave authority to the county court to control water rights. However, this really only occurred in Salt Lake County, with business as usual in other parts of the territory. So the next step in this story is the Desert Land Act, which was passed by the federal government in 1877 to promote homesteading of the arid western U.S. Some important things it did is it severed title of the water from the land. And this is an important distinction from how water law is practiced in the eastern United States, where riparian rights is practiced. It also delegated authority of managing water use to the respective states and territories, and that's a key event. It had the stated goal of spreading irrigation practices throughout the West, and as such, it serves as a foundational step in our water laws. So moving on here, in 1880, due to a failure to enforce the 1852 Act, the territorial legislature tried another approach. They appointed county selectmen, which were kind of like water commissioners. But again, this effort wasn't very successful. Confusion remained, and the church remained an important authority in determining water rights. So this brings us up to statehood and beyond. So with statehood in 1896, water rights were at the forefront of the state's constitution. Article 17 addresses all existing rights, and it states that all existing rights to the use of any of the waters in this state for any useful or beneficial purpose are hereby recognized and confirmed. Now, that's an important concept right there to understand that they wanted to recognize any existing water rights that were in use during the territorial period. And that's going to come into bear as we talk about why we adjudicate later on. So just remember that. The next step is in 1897, the Office of the State Engineer was formed. And one of the primary purposes was to begin to bring order to this process of acquiring and documenting water rights. This is something that had so far proven difficult to implement. However, still, acquiring a water right was inconsistent and continued to cause confusion. So some steps that led up to where we are now into the first water laws is that in 1902, the United States Reclamation Service, which is now known as the Bureau of Reclamation, was established to reclaim the West. And in those days, reclaiming the West meant water projects. So to secure federal funding for reclamation projects, the states were encouraged to adopt statutes, water statutes, that provided a higher degree of certainty regarding water rights. So in 1903, the state legislature enacted the first comprehensive water laws, and they provided for appropriating surface rights, recording existing rights, and for adjudicating rights by the courts. Now, the key thing to take away here is that the courts were tasked originally with adjudicating water rights. Another thing to take from this is that this only applied to surface water rights. At the time, the use of water from underground sources was very limited, and primarily because of the technology available at the time, and so they didn't include underground water in this initial statute. Well, as I indicated, the adjudication of water rights was originally tasked with the courts, but that wasn't very successful. And so in 1919, the legislature moved some of the responsibility for adjudicating water rights to the state engineer. And what it said is that the state engineer would develop a proposed determination, which would then be submitted to the court for consideration. And this 1919 legislation is the foundation of what we are doing today, why we're meeting here today in this public meeting. Okay, and so in fact, our earliest adjudications date from this period, and we'll talk a little bit about that in a slide or two. One final step in this occurred a couple decades later, and so I mentioned earlier that in 1903, the initial water laws only applied to surface water. Well, in the last step in these foundational events occurred in 1935, and the legislature expanded water law to include all groundwater. So all waters were now subject to the state engineer's authority, and if you wanted to appropriate water, you had to make application to the state engineer's office. Okay, so that is our history lesson, and so hopefully that starts to paint a picture of why we adjudicate, and we'll cover here a few of the the deeper reasons of why we adjudicate. So prior to Utah water law in 1903, water rights typically fell into a combination of 5 different categories. One is they were founded on decrees by ecclesiastical leaders. Another one is they were claims that were filed for record at the county recorder's office. And again, remember, this was one of the attempts that they made to try and bring some organization to water rights. The other way we have water rights defined prior to 1903 is they were decrees by a court. Now, you might say, state engineer, why are you messing with rights that were previously decreed by a judge? Isn't this just another adjudication that we're doing right now? And that's true, but commonly these older decrees were between limited parties. They weren't the general adjudications that we are doing right now. And so that's the reason that even though some of these water rights were decreed previously by courts, that we are now reopening these things, adjudicating them with all of the parties involved. And again, that's why all of you receive these notices is so that we could call these a general adjudication and bring all parties, all possible parties into this case. And the next thing is that water rights were defined by contracts or agreements. And again, these are typically between limited parties and didn't include all potential parties that might be affected. And then finally, some of these water rights have never reached any record. They may still be used out there. We still receive what are called diligence claims today. And in fact, you see here a picture of one that I reviewed a couple years ago. And this is a pre-statutory use that was in place at statehood. And if you recall that Article 14 in the Constitution, it indicated that all water rights that existed prior to statehood would be recognized. And so the adjudication is one of the ways that we bring these on. So that's kind of the problem that we're here to solve, is to try and bring all of those on. The lack of definition in understanding all of these water rights causes some issues. And some of these issues is that there's no public record for some of these existing water rights. So how do you know if you're impairing someone or if your water right is going to be impaired? How do you protect your water right if there's no public record of it? So the adjudication fixes that. Since there were so many water rights that were not of record, it was common to over appropriate streams. So more water rights would be granted on a stream than there was water to satisfy them. So this was very common. And by moving through the adjudication, we begin to iron these things out and bring some order to these systems. Another issue is that often, even if they were of record in one way or another, they weren't defined. And so these cause controversies. And in the past, these controversies were settled either by ecclesiastical or court decrees. And so adjudications is another way that we bring these and organize them and define them and get them on the records of the state engineer. Okay, so that hopefully answers some of the questions of about what we do here. So let's talk about what a general stream adjudication is. That's kind of we've kind of ended our history lesson. Hopefully you understand that a little bit better. So what is a general adjudication? A general adjudication is an action in the state district court. It binds all water users in the area and the state engineer, which is the Division of Water Rights. It is governed by Utah State Code, Title 73, Chapter 4. And it's important to note that this is not a new process, even though it's many years since those first statutes and since statehood. The very first adjudications took place back in the 1920s. The Sevier, the Weber, and the Virgin River basins were all adjudicated early in that period, early in the 1900s. And so we're at this point where we're up to this area now. These things take a while, or at least historically they have taken a long time. So tonight we are here to talk about the adjudication of the Daniels Creek Subdivision. And that is a portion of the Utah Lake Jordan River adjudication. And you can see that on this map of Utah in purple. This adjudication is defined by the drainage systems that follow from the Great Salt Lake, going up the Jordan River, up to Utah Lake, and then following the Provo River up to the headwaters in the Uintas. This adjudication actually began back in 1936 with a complaint to the court. And an order was given on this adjudication in 1944. And the word is apparently this is the longest running court case in the state, having started back in 1936. Okay, carrying on here. So let's cover a few more topics here and answer a few more questions of why we adjudicate, because there are a few more reasons we adjudicate. We've covered a few of them, but let's kind of close the circle and just wrap them all up here. So we've kind of covered this, but our objective here is to bring all claims onto the permanent record. Remember all of those pre-statutory water rights, those surface rights that were in place prior to 1903, and those underground water rights that were in place prior to 1935. By requiring all water right holders to participate in the adjudication process, we identify all of these rights and we bring all of them onto the state record, onto the state engineer's records. Okay, I should have clicked forward there, so sorry. Another reason for the adjudication is to identify Federal Reserve rights. So let's talk about this for just a minute. I've listed here a couple court cases and an amendment that have bearing in federal reserve rights. The first is what's called the Winters Doctrine, which in short says that when the federal government reserves land for a purpose, they also reserve water rights sufficient to provide for that reservation's purpose. So you might ask yourself, what's a federal reservation? Well, they come in the form of Native American reservations, national forest reservations, national parks, and many other type of reservations. And the priority of these reservations is defined as the date that the federal government reserved those lands for that public purpose. That's what the Winters Doctrine says. The second item there, the McCarran Amendment, is important because it waives federal immunity for state-based water right lawsuits. Normally, you don't get to sue the federal government. The McCarran Amendment states that the federal government must participate in a state-based general adjudication. So this is important because the state of Utah has a lot of federal land, and even in particular surrounding the Heber Valley, there are forest lands, and the way that we identify those federal reserve rights is through a general adjudication and by joining the federal government into those adjudications. And so a great benefit to the state is that we're able to define those federal reserve rights so that we can then better administer the water rights for the people of Utah. Okay, so let's dig deeper into additional benefits we get from general adjudications. Well, they tend to prevent a multiplicity of suits, is the phrase that we have here, and bring clarity to the water rights picture. Sometimes we don't understand how all of these water rights work together, and so the adjudication irons out a lot of these issues and brings a more clear picture of the overall water right picture. Okay, and next this is where it causes some concern from a lot of people is it reduces and it removes or reduces water rights that which have been wholly or partially abandoned or forfeited through non-use. Now I know this is probably one of the more concerning parts of general adjudication, so let's talk about it for a minute. So we've talked about several doctrines of water law. An important aspect of Western water law is the idea that when a water user ceases to use water, it can be forfeited so that other water users can place that water to use. And this doctrine is based on the idea that water is a public resource and that these rights should be used for a beneficial purpose and not held unused for some future use. And this is a common water law feature in all of Western states where water is scarce. So in the state of Utah, a water right is determined to be subject to forfeiture if it has not been used for a period of 7 years. Now, a key part of that phrase that I just said is that it's subject to forfeiture. The state engineer by herself does not have the authority to declare a water right forfeit. Even though we're in the midst of an adjudication where we make some of these determinations, all that we can do is recommend to the court. Ultimately, the court is going to be the one that determines that these water rights are forfeited. But it is true that it's based on the evaluations that we do through the course of this adjudication. So you might wonder, how is this concept of forfeiture fair? It does. At least from the onset, it seems to not be a fair way to go about. Well, consider the example of a farmer that ceases to use a water right. Say the farmer had a water right that let them irrigate 100 acres of land, and for 20 years, let's say, this farmer decides that they're just not going to do it. They're not going to farm. And what happens to that water that farmer would have used? Well, it doesn't stay in the creek. The doesn't stay in the creek. It's not sitting there waiting to be used. That water right continues to go downstream and is used by others that are able to and willing to put that water to beneficial use. So if in the future that farmer decides that they want to start irrigating again, that water has to come from somewhere, and so someone downstream is going to lose water. So is that fair? Is that fair that those people downstream that have come to rely on that water, is it fair that they should now go without water? Our laws have determined that if you cease to use water, if you cease to use your water right, you can, under certain circumstances, lose it in the interest of others that are willing to use the water. And so forfeiture is something we look at through the course of an adjudication. We look to see that the water is fully used. If a water right is completely not used, then the water right can possibly be forfeited. If it's partially used, then part of it could possibly be recommended to be forfeited. So what do you do? The best advice we can give is make sure that you're using your water right. That's really the best that you can do in this. So we'll go into a little bit more detail a little bit later on, and I'm sure we'll have a few questions about this in our Q&A session. So again, write down your questions. We've got people that can take these. Sometimes these get into the weeds, get into the details a lot, and so we may have to set up another time to talk with you. We are willing to work with you, and we're not out there looking to grab water rights. But we are just trying to implement Utah state water law. So let's move on here, and we'll take questions as we need to towards the end. But let's go on here. The final reason we adjudicate is we are trying to get comprehensive decrees on all water rights within a drainage. And again, you guys are probably familiar with some of the decrees of the past. The one in this area that's probably at the forefront of your mind is the Provo River decree. There's probably some of you that have water rights based on that decree. However, that decree was limited. It was limited to just those that were diverting from the river. This general adjudication will result in a decree that includes all water rights and will be a final description of all water rights in the area. Okay. So with that, let's move into the adjudication process. Okay, and this is really kind of a three-part process. We'll review first the entire process, and then we'll look into each phase in greater detail. In fact, we'll more so focus on the steps that are going to follow after this public meeting. Okay. So this is the first phase, and if you see number 4 is the public meeting, that's where we are right now. So what has already happened is that there's been a petition made, the notice has been sent out, and the summons has been issued, and we are now presently holding a public meeting. What will happen next is that a notice will be sent out that all water users need to file a claim within 90 days. And that we'll talk a little bit more in detail about that in a minute. So that's the next step that will follow this public meeting. And then a list of unclaimed rights will be prepared, and we'll talk a little bit more detail about that. And then after that list of unclaimed rights is prepared, there will be 90 days to file an objection to that. There will be another public meeting. And then there will be a final summons. This is the final chance to, if you've missed all the other deadlines, to get a claim in. If you have a water right, that you need to get your claim before that period. If there are objections to the list of unclaimed rights, and these are rights that just don't get claimed by anyone, then we will resolve those. And ultimately, we're going to look to the court to abandon those water rights that just are not claimed. Okay, and again, we'll go into more detail. I'm just kind of going over the surface of it right now. After that, at this point, we've received hundreds of claims from all of the water users that have claimed to be using a water right in this area. And so the next phase is the phase that the claim of investigation phase, and ultimately leads up to what's called a proposed determination. Okay, so this is what we're going to be doing in the future. All right, and so what we will be doing over the next couple years is taking all of those various claims. We have a staff of people that will go out and investigate all of those claims, review them. We're going to come out to the site and look at them one by one. And ultimately, we're going to put all of those together in what's called a proposed determination. And that will be filed with the courts and sent out to all of the water users. And then and that lists all of the various details of the water rights. Remember all those things we went over earlier, all of those different facets, the beneficial uses, the point of diversion, the place of use, all of those details are going to be listed. Okay. And so if something in there isn't what you expected or isn't what you thought, or we got something wrong, which does happen, you will have 90 days to file an objection. We will hold another public meeting at that point. And then after that point, we, whatever objections we receive, we have to resolve those objections in one way or another. Okay. And now once we reach we've resolved all those objections, we will then have the court enter a final decree on this subdivision. Okay. So that's ultimately what we're working forward to. Now we're going to dive into a little bit more detail on what is going to happen in the immediate future and taking us right up to the end. Okay. So what's going to happen next after this public meeting is we will send out a notice to file claims. That's another big, massive mailing that's going to go out. And we are planning on doing that on February 24th. That's 2 weeks from tonight. And so what that will mean is that, well, all right, so let's go in a little bit more detail. For those that have a water right of record, we will send you a water user's claim already filled out with the information that we have on record. So if you agree with that, all you need to do is sign that and return that to us. For those that don't have a water right of record, we're going to send you a blank water user's claim form. Now we understand that this form is a little confusing, and it kind of be hard to understand. We're happy to help you out with this. At the end of this presentation, we're going to give you contact information for some of our staff members that can help you with this. We do need to be careful through the ongoing pandemic, so we'd request that you do not come down to our office without an appointment. We have invested in cameras for all of our staff members, so we are happy to set up virtual meetings to discuss. So after this, you will have, let's see, I kind of covered that. Should have hit forward there. I apologize for that. That's what we just talked about. After that, you're going to have 90 days from that date, from the date we send the notice to file water user's claim. And this is very important. If you fail to file a water user's claim during this period, you may eventually be barred from ever asserting a claim to a water right in the future. You can request a 30-day extension if you need it. The easiest way is to do this by email, that email address that we listed at the beginning, and it will again be listed at the end and is in the documents you've received. You can email that a request for a 30-day extension. And I'll respond quickly to those requests. Truthfully, I can't think of a reason why we wouldn't grant an extension. So if you need one and you can't do this within the 90 days, then by all means email me and we'll grant you a 30-day extension. So once we receive all of these claims, we will begin the claim evaluation process. Now remember, at this point, we've received hundreds of claims in the area. We have an adjudication team that will be working in the Heber Valley this coming year to begin the claim evaluation process. This involves visiting each and every water right. We're going to be looking at irrigated acreages. We're going to be looking for wells. We're going to be looking for head gates. We're going to be looking for spring gates. Generally, we're going to do everything we need to understand each and every water right in detail, so that when we've finished evaluating your water right, we can prepare a proposed determination of your water right. And this proposed determination will be in the form, you'll get a copy of what we're going to recommend, and that will be in the form of what's called a state engineer's recommendation. And this document will be mailed to you, and it represents what will eventually be shown in the proposed determination once we've reviewed all of the water rights, and we file that with the court. If we get things wrong, so most of you will probably get this state engineer's recommendation long before we prepare and file the proposed determination, because it takes so much time to get through this. If we get something wrong, or you don't agree with what we have, we are happy to discuss anything in these recommendations. Our primary goal is to get these things right. So when you get that, please review it. Feel free to contact our people, ask any questions you need to. We're happy to talk. Okay. So after this, and this truly is happening in the midst of all of this claim evaluation. At the end of the claim filing period that we've talked about, we will review all of the claims, and we're going to compare them to existing rights that we have on record. Forgive me just a minute, I need a drink. For water rights of record, if we don't receive a water user's claim, the right goes on a list of unclaimed rights. And this list is filed with the court. We also send notice of this to everyone in the subdivision, in the Daniels Creek Subdivision. Okay, we send notice of this document, and then we hold another public meeting. So then if you have a right that is on the list of unclaimed rights, you will then have 90 days to object to file an objection with the court. And this objection needs to be accompanied with a water user's claim. Again, we're trying to get water user's claim for everyone that has a right. So if somehow we missed it or you missed it and you got onto the list of unclaimed rights, file an objection and include a water user's claim so that we can get you included into the adjudication and into the claim evaluation process. Okay, your objection needs to state it needs to state why you were unable to file within the 90-day filing period. We typically don't fight these objections, but remember that they have to be filed with the courts. We can't receive these objections. Okay. After all of these objections to the list of unclaimed rights are resolved, we will petition the court for a decree which will permanently abandon these rights. And so it's important to file your objection if you see your water right on there. And this decree may also prohibit any future diligence claims from being filed in the area. And so that's an important distinction to make there with what the decree on the list of unclaimed rights does. Okay. All right. So let's talk about the proposed determination, because this is where, a couple slides ago, I indicated that as we reviewed claims, we would send out these state engineers' recommendations. Once we've evaluated all of the water rights in the subdivision, all of these various state engineers' recommendations are compiled into one document called the proposed determination. And then this document is published with the court and provided to all of the claimants and anyone that has filed an appearance with the court. And again, this is a common theme, as you can see here. Again, you have 90 days to object to this proposed determination if there is something in that determination that you don't agree with. And then we enter into a phase where we resolve these objections. If we made an error, we're typically quick to correct things. And errors do happen. Sometimes, however, we get into some pretty difficult issues and they can take some time to resolve. Ultimately, we're bound by what Utah water law says we can do. And so sometimes, it's difficult to overcome these objections. Finally, though, once we've resolved all of the objections, the court renders a judgment confirming the proposed determination or modifying it based on the objections. And this is the end of the process. At this point, all of the water rights that were recognized will now be considered decreed water rights. And this is the most solid status of a water right, especially when decreed through a general adjudication. And so this is a good thing once we ultimately get there. So let's talk into a little bit more detail of this subdivision. So what you see here is the Daniels Creek Subdivision. You can see here the adjudication boundary. That's that kind of dashed black line that you see on the map. Each of those purple or pink dots that you see there represent points of diversion for water rights that we know about. So we know about, if I counted up correctly, I think there's 727 different water rights of record in this area. And so there's not 727 points there clearly, but frequently lots of different water rights are on top of each other on some of those dots. This is the area that we're adjudicating in this adjudication. So let's move along here and talk about some common issues that we run into. One of the first issues we run into is out-of-date title. This is a significant challenge that we face is not knowing who the present owner is for some of these water rights. It's not unusual for water rights to pass from person to person without anyone updating ownership information in our office. Thus, sometimes it can be difficult to identify who is the legal owner of a water right. And so as such, it's not unusual for us to send notice to people that have passed away or to people that have moved. If you get one of these, then that's at least now you can understand what has happened. This is one of the reasons that we send out notices to everyone in the geographical area. We want to try and capture anyone and everyone who might have an interest in the water rights in this area. So if you receive a notice in someone else's name, this is why. There might be a title issue that needs to be resolved. Now you can still file a claim, but we strongly encourage you to update title so that you can receive notices to the appropriate address and in the appropriate name in the future. Another issue we run into is no proof required rights. Normally, when you apply for a water right, you submit to the state engineer's office. We covered that earlier. That's what the 1903 water law, that first water law to come in place, that's what it said we needed to do. And then once approved, you do the work and you submit proof of beneficial use, which requires the work of an engineer or surveyor. Well, during World War II, this requirement was suspended for a time since so many of the engineers and surveyors were busy overseas. So for a short time, small water rights were exempted from filing proof. However, today, these water rights can be a challenge for us to evaluate. They are notoriously inaccurate. Their points of diversion are sometimes not where they really are, or at least our records don't match up with where they really are. If you think you have one of these, work with us to help us understand how the water is currently being used. And at the end of this, we'll show you a few tools that we have on our website that might help you diagnose a problem like this if you think your water right might be one of these no proof required water rights. So let's talk about the timeline. So here we are today on February 10th. We anticipate that the notice to file claims will go out in 2 weeks on February 24th of 2021. That brings the 90-day claim filing period to May 24th of 2021. And then we're going to begin investigating all of these various claims. And the first job that we're going to do is try and reconcile this against all of the water rights that we know about. And for those that don't have claims filed, we'll put those onto the list of unclaimed rights. And that is scheduled to happen in August of 2021. And then we'll hold the public meeting regarding the list of unclaimed rights, and the 90-day objection period will then begin for the list of unclaimed rights. And again, this is only if a water right does not have a claim associated with it during this initial claim filing period. Okay, so that 90-day period will run into November of 2021. And then we will, seek those other steps there and seek the decree and abandon the rights that are on the list of unclaimed rights. And we already covered all of those steps. In the meantime, we're going to continue to evaluate all of the various claims that we've received, and we're hoping, these adjudications take some time. We have several of these running in various stages of completion, and we're working hard to finish the ones that are open and still work on these ones that we're opening now. And so we have a lot of work ahead of us, but we're hoping to publish the proposed determination sometime in 2023. I've listed January 2023 as our planned goal. At that point, we will hold a public meeting, and that's when that next 90-day objection period would come into play. Okay, and so then, if we were able to get the proposed determination completed by then, that would bring the 90-day objection period to in April of 2023. So that's a rough outline and timeline of what we might be looking at. I think maybe the biggest takeaway is just to indicate that we are planning to be up and working in this area. We do a lot of work in the summer and spring and fall. We do as much as we can in the winter, but we're going to be up here working this coming year and the year after that, evaluating all of these various claims. Okay. So let's, wrong direction. There we go. Let's address a question probably that has come up is, these are some of the very common questions we have is, will I lose my water right? We're nearing the end of the presentation here. So, if we haven't been able to answer this question yet, we'll try and take another shot here. If we still have questions, it's probably where we need to talk with you offline or in one of these Q&A sessions afterwards and try and answer your questions. So if you are using your water right, you have nothing to fear as long as you file your claim. Again, file your claim in this period. You just need to make sure that you file the claim in this 90-day period that's going to start here soon, and you have nothing to fear, okay? If you have a water right that is not of record, you must file a claim or else you will forever lose your right to submit a claim. So it's very, very important, if your water right is not yet on our records, that you file that claim in this 90-day claim filing period and let us know that you have one of these pre-statutory water rights, okay? Because ultimately that's what this general adjudication is going to do, is make it so that you can't bring those claims in the future. Okay, so now here's the hard part. If the water use authorized under your water right has fallen out of use for 7 years or more, the water right or a portion of it might be recommended to be disallowed in the proposed determination. So the very best thing you can do is just use your water right, get it into use. Okay. So I know there could be questions there. We're happy to take questions on more specific issues if we need to. I know there's a lot of concern and truthfully a lot of misinformation regarding forfeiture. I think our staff members can help you with that and dispel some of the fears that you might have regarding that. So just a couple more slides here, and then we'll get to the questions, and we'll see if we can run this Q&A session. One thing I wanted to handle here that is of a concern and unique to this public meeting is I wanted to go over our COVID-19 precautions. I think it's a very valid concern that we're going to have people up in your area walking around and doing things, and we definitely don't want to be the vector for causing a problem up in your area. And so we do have some restrictions and some precautions that we implement to make sure that our people are safe and that we also protect the public. And so where possible, all meetings are going to be held remotely if possible, right? I know sometimes this might not be possible. And so where you do need to come to our office, it is a requirement that we set an appointment. if you want to come to the offices of the Division of Water Rights. Okay, so we're going to provide you some contact information to for people that you can contact if you need to do that. So as our people are out working in your area, water rights staff will wear masks when speaking with members of the public, and this is going to be true whether we are in our office or whether we're meeting with you out in the Heber Valley. We're going to have masks on when we're talking with you. If we're out, reviewing a water right and we're out alone, our staff are probably going to slip the mask down, but they should always have masks on them with them when they're talking with the public. Our water rights staff will observe social distancing measure at all times. Okay, and so that's, you guys are all familiar with the rule. That's 6 feet separation. Our water rights staff will never enter homes. There's no need for us to come into homes. If we need to talk with you and it's raining, then we'll set up a time that we can talk remotely, or we'll set up an appointment. But our water rights staff won't be coming into homes as part of this evaluation. And any staff member that feels sick will not report to work. The state of Utah has generous sick leave, and most people have plenty of it to use. And so we are doing everything we can to make sure that we are safe as we are doing the work that we are tasked with. Okay, finally, normally we do this towards the end. I'm going to take a little break here and give you a little website tour. These are some tools, and I'm going to, if you'll forgive me here for a minute, I'm going to stop presenting for a minute and then present on a web page so I can take you around. If you have gotten what you needed right now, you're welcome to go ahead and leave. This is where we're going to get into some questions and answers, and we're going to show you a few kind of more technical tools on our website. And if that doesn't interest you, you can go ahead and check out. And we thank you for coming. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask us. So let's see. So I've stopped presenting, and I'm going to now switch over to the website. And if you'll just have patience with me for a minute, it's always a trick to see that you're doing this right. Again, thank you for your patience here, and I'm going to set that up. All right. So you should now be seeing our website, which is the waterrights.utah.gov. Okay, and one of the very first tools that you'll identify is this link, and I think you can see my cursor here. And I like this. This is a very, very good tool. This is usually how I navigate around and find water rights. There's other ways to do it. You can search a water right number if you know your water right number up here, but I still find that the map search is the most convenient. So I'm going to click on that, and you will see a mapping tool. I'll block that, and we're going to zoom in. Hopefully I don't make you sick. I apologize if I am. I'll try and go slow, and we're looking at the Heber Valley. And at some point here, you're going to see a bunch of water rights pop up. And once I zoom in far enough, there we go. Okay. The red marks denote underground water rights, and the blue marks denote surface water rights. Okay. Now, off to the side here, you can see a whole bunch of layers, and there's even more under show more layers. If you're like me, I actually find I use this for personal reasons too, because we have so much good information up here. One that you might really like is the parcels layer. So let's say you live over here and you want to find out if there's a water right. You own this parcel right here. And if you happen to own this parcel, I'm sorry, we're using your property as an example. You can see that in fact there is a water right that appears to be located on this parcel. And you can click that link, and you can see that this water right is water right 556174. And this little window you see here has some information listed up here. It has the priority date. It has what type of water right it has. You have the uses. I stands for irrigation. S stands for stock watering. You have the quantity of water. In this case, it's the flow rate, 0.015 CFS. And you have the current owner of record. And then you have the point of diversion listed. Now, if you click, give me a minute, let me get a drink. If you click on the water right number, this will now bring up, yep, it's doing it right. This will now bring up the database entry page for this water right. And this has a lot more information. We won't go into the detail here because every water right is a little different. But some common features you'll see is you can go to the scan documents. And what you have here is each and every document that we have on our paper file is scanned and placed in this scan document folder. Okay, and so you can look and see everything that we have that it's in our big file room is scanned and listed here. So that's a huge, great tool that will help you as you begin to evaluate, hey, what do I have on my property? Okay. So hopefully that helps there. The next thing we wanted to do is I'm going to go back. Now we're back to waterrights.utah.gov. The next place that you might want to pay attention to is this adjudication link right down here. Okay, so we'll click on that. Here you have a cool little video. And if I did a poor job tonight, this will fill in some of the gaps. You can watch that video and it will help you out, help you understand what the heck is going on. And now if you come up here and click on the active adjudications, now let's see here. I need to check something real quick. I need to log out to make this work right. Now waterrights.utah.gov. Apologize for that. Sometimes we have a different view than what the public sees. We use some of the same tools to do our work. And when you click on it, active adjudications, you will see all of these various subdivisions. These are all of the subdivisions that we're actively working on now. And so if you come down to the Daniels Creek Subdivision, which is the 55-11, first off, you can click on the map and this will bring you to that similar sort of map that we saw earlier. We won't go into that. So we'll come back. Let's instead click on this hyperlink, the 55-11 hyperlink. Now what this will do is open up the adjudication progress interface. And this has a lot of cool things. First off, this is a listing of all of the rights that we have of record. And as we move through the adjudication, it will include all of the various claims. Now, some of the important things we have here is a few key links. First off, if you have a right that's not of record, so you don't have a water right number, but you have been using water since before those pre-statutory dates of 1903 for surface water and 1935 for underground water, then there is a link here that you can click to file for a claim, to file a water user's claim. Now we'll come back to this in a minute. If you do have a water right, and again, when we mail the notice to file claims, we're going to send you or send to the contact, the owner of record that we have, we're going to send a completed water user's claim. If you don't agree with what's listed there on that draft water user's claim, then you can come in here and you can prepare your own. And so let's come down to a water right and let's just pick one at random, and you can click on this little file here. And what this will do is it will bring you into what we call a water user's claim wizard. Okay, and so this will walk you through preparing a water user's claim that you can, if you need to change something, if you don't agree with what we have on our records, then you can prepare your own and change things about it. You can also, let's say that this is the owners of record here are Carrie Carrie and John P. and Alicia Hunt. So let's say that they've moved and they're no longer the owners of this water right. And let's say that you are the owner of record. You can, instead of checking this, you would instead come up here and check this and enter your information. Now, it's important to note here, this doesn't update title. This just lets us know that you as a claimant are claiming this water right. And you'll need to go through a separate process to update title. And that process, we won't go into great detail of this. This is a good thing that you can bring into a specific question to our people is you'll need to file what's called a report of conveyance to convey the water right from the Hunts to you if you own this water right. Okay, so one option is to put your information here. Let's say that you are in fact Carrie or John or Alicia Hunt. We ask you to put your phone number here, and so that we can contact you, and then you would go on to the next level here, and this gives you a print of what we have on our records right now. Okay, and so in the event that you don't agree, you can then come into any of these other tabs and you can change things. Okay, and it's really helpful if you do that, to give us an explanation and tell us why you're changing things and what, just let us know what's going on. It just helps us better do our job. Okay, so hopefully that's a cool little wizard that helps your way through filing a water user's claim. And if we go back, let's see, let's click out of this. Now we're back to the adjudication progress interface. If you had a right that is not of record, you can see that when we click on this link here, this takes you to a similar interface. But instead of there being an existing water right holder, you would just provide us your information. Okay, so we won't walk through that in greater detail. If you get stuck working through that wizard, by all means, contact our people. We are happy to help. Now, another thing that this adjudication progress interface does is it gives you an indication of the status. Okay, there's some color coded boxes up here, and they will tell you where in the process that we are. You can see that this Hartley Lithgow water right actually already has a claim filed. There have been claims filed in the past for various water rights, and so where we have evidence of that, we list that as a claim being filed. Hopefully, eventually, most of these get a yellow box. And then as they proceed, as we begin to evaluate them, they will then first, once we've come out and done a field review, the box will turn green. Once we've prepared a state engineer's recommendation, the box will turn blue. And you will have various dates entered in as your water right is evaluated. Okay, so hopefully that covers that. These are some nice little tools that you can use to track the progress of your water right through this. Okay, so let's. I think that is all that we wanted to show on the water right, and so I'm going to bounce back. If you'll give me your patience again, I'm going to stop sharing and we're going to get the presentation back up. Again, thank you. I see a few good questions here, and we're about to go into our Q&A session where we will, if your question hasn't been answered, that we will answer those questions. Okay, so here we are back. And okay, so I think we're good. We've done the website tour. And so now we're on to who do you contact to discuss the adjudication process. And so I'll leave this up here for a minute. This is where we'll do some, couple introductions. I've introduced myself. I'm Michael Drake. You can email me if you have questions. We also have that general email address on the next page. So if you'll just be patient for a minute, we'll get there. Some of the other people you may work with is Gary Brimley. you've heard Gary talk on this, and maybe Gary, quickly say hello.
Right, I'm Gary Brimley, engineer manager and direct report to Mike Drake.
Thanks, Gary. The other key individual in our office is Nick Yiter. And Nick, if you're on, he is the adjudication team leader. He's the guy that's going to be working with and responsible for the team that's going to be working on this subdivision. So Nick, if you could say hi.
Hello, everybody. My name's Nick. Mike's given me a pretty good setup for who I am and what I'm doing. So it'll be me and my team that are coming out to investigate your property. So if you have any questions, feel free to give me a call. The number that is listed on this slide is incorrect.
Oh, no.
Yeah. So if you are looking to get in contact with me, you can take down my number now. It's 385-441-0364. Thank you so much. Yeah, thanks.
Okay, I think that's correct now, right?
That is correct.
That's a nice thing. I can do these on the fly.
Hey, all right.
No one will ever know, right? Okay, thank you, Nick. And then Nick has a team of people. Maybe we won't do individual introductions, but I'll just state their names. These are the people that are going to be hopefully, if this all works, running our Q&A session. So Nick will be there, and then Sarah Dennert, and then Aspen Johnston will be on as well. And I'm missing my notes here. I apologize. And so they are the adjudication. Oh, and I forgot. Jonathan Meenan is also on the team. He's a newer employee, so I forgot Jay. Sorry about that. Okay, so we'll advance one more slide here. Hopefully you've got those numbers if you need them. This is the main email address. This comes to me. It's also distributed to the various people that are going to be responsible for this as well. All right, and so I can remind myself where we go from here. This is where it gets tricky. Okay, so let's see, we have just under 100 people on here still. All right, so here's what we're going to do, and this is going to be fun. If this fails, we're just going to bounce back here and we'll take your questions one by one. Or if that frustrates you, I apologize. You can contact us later and ask your questions. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to start these breakout rooms, and it may take me a minute to set this up. What will happen is you will each be distributed into one of 3 different rooms, okay? And each of these rooms will be presided by either Nick, Sarah, or Aspen. And they will begin to work with you through your questions. If that's taking too long, me and Gary are going to stay on this main room, and you can come out here and ask questions as well. You have complete ability to move between the various rooms by using it's a triangle, a square, and a circle. There's a little button up at the top of your screen that you can use to interface with that, okay? So everyone cross your fingers. Hopefully this works. I am going to now start to set this up, and it will break you out and distribute you amongst these various rooms. And so we're going to do this, and I'm going to make sure that we have Aspen right there. This is going to be Aspen's room. Just patience, please. Thank you. Okay, and then we're going to make Sarah's. And I need to make sure Sarah's in here. Oh, darn it, where is it? There, Sarah's room. Okay, and then we're gonna make Nick's room. And where is Nick? I gotta find his name and move it over here. So again, thank you for your patience.
For everyone's benefit, for all of those of you who are still on the meeting and anticipating being broken out into these rooms, you're welcome to stay in the room that you're assigned to, or return to the main meeting room, or you can sign off for the night. This is not necessarily a requirement to go ask questions or talk or continue participating.
Yeah, and so this is kind of effectively the end of the meeting. I'll take a minute before I open these rooms to say thank you. Thank you for participating. If we can do anything to help you understand what's going on, we will do so. And so with that, I will go ahead and open these rooms, and we'll be checking into these, and hopefully this works. If we receive where it isn't, we'll just bounce back to this main thing. So again, thank you, and good luck.